Chair will call to order tonight's regular meeting of the Board of Education. It's March 15th, 2022. Roll call, please.
Ms. Coyle?
Here.
Ms. Redonio?
Here.
Ms. Steckity?
Here.
Mr. Marin?
Here.
Mr. Avia?
Here.
Ms. Hoover?
Here.
Ms. Conover?
Here. Okay, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right, the first item on the agenda is closed session. The chair will entertain a motion to enter closed session to discuss personnel issues and student discipline.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Avia?
Yes.
Ms. Steckity?
Yes.
Ms. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Marin?
Yes.
Ms. Redonio?
Yes.
Ms. Hoover?
Yes.
Adjourn to closed session.
The board has returned after closed session. The first item on our agenda is the approval of minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the February 22nd, 2022 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the closed session of the February 22nd, 2022 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. The next item on the agenda is public comment. We do not have any public comments submitted. So we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Personnel recommendations: Jill Jackson, Westmont High School, long-term sub social worker. Stuart Allard, Westmont Junior High School, long-term sub 6th grade social studies. Joe Jamerisi, Westmont High School, evening custodian. Jeffrey Melvin, Manning, evening custodian. Ramon Grace, Westmont High School, freshman football coach. Alyssa Woody, Westmont Junior High School, girls soccer coach. Robert Kaplan, Westmont High School, freshman sophomore softball coach. Adam McDaniels, Westmont High School assistant track coach, and then there are resignations. Number 2 is the approval of the ombudsman contract. Number 3 is the approval of the March 2022 expenditure report, and number 4 is the ratification of February 2020 regular payroll. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Avia?
Yes.
Ms. Steckity?
Yes.
Ms. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Marin?
Yes.
Ms. Redonio?
Yes.
Ms. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Coyle?
Yes. Okay, the information and discussion is the next item on the agenda, with the first item being Miller Elementary School presentation.
Awesome. So thank you for welcoming all the schools in this year for snapshot into the hallways, the classrooms, what's going on in the buildings, and we're proud to be here, and we thank you for that. My name is Tim Weiler, principal at Miller, and we have some awesome staff members here tonight joining us to support 4 really cool initiatives that we started a couple years ago. Well, one of them started a few years ago, and then the rest kind of like snowballed into bigger, better things. So we're here tonight to talk about our makerspace, which is it's a creative place for our students to learn and grow. Our imagination station, how we've attacked the learning loss with SEL, and how our social worker at Miller has stepped up and really done a fantastic job as a specials instructor every day during a block of time for the students, and meeting all our students' needs, social and emotionally. And then our final one is our kindergarten carousel. So the team is here tonight to support all that. So they can correct me if I misinterpret anything or say things that aren't, that need to be fine-tuned. But we really, a couple years ago before we went into the pandemic, we really saw a gap district-wide, because Miller and Manning were two schools that had kindergarten and first grade classes in them, and we realized there's not enough play-based, hands-on, creative play going on in our buildings. Very rigorous, high-stakes assessments, having students learn in different capacities. So we wanted to kind of take a step back, look at the research, and we found that play-based, hands-on learning multiplies the kind of growth that we want to see in our kids. So Albert Einstein, many, many years ago, said play is the highest form of research, and we have definitely put it to the test this year. So the first creative initiative that we want to talk about tonight is the imagination stations, and this could not have been done without the support of our teachers, our parents, our PTO, the school district, the board, providing a lot of the materials for the rooms, donations, and then the staff that put in time every day to make it work. So a snapshot of what the Imagination Station is and is all about. It's a rotation of items that we put into a classroom. So we would not have been able to do this in our when we were K-5 buildings because we were using every nook and cranny for class space and offices. But we do have a classroom that's set up that can accept a whole class of students. And so we put this classroom to use by developing ways for students to come in into an area of the building where they can play, they can get creative, they can build, they can draw, they can write, and it's research-based, teacher observations. We change things and fine-tune things every few weeks, and we would not, again, this would not be possible without funding and the support of the school district. And it's the one complaint we've gotten about the Imagination Station this year is that students have to leave after a certain amount of time. It is by far one of the most highly talked about places. When you ask students what's their favorite part of the day, Imagination Station and creative play is one of them that they say. And we don't have any behavior issues in Imagination Station. We don't have students that don't want to go. It's a place where everyone can learn at their own level, which is the best part of it all. So it takes the combination of some high structure. Students walk into the class every day. They sit on a set of dots on the floor, color-coded and in rows. They go over. It's a great system where they use a random system for students to pick what station they're going to go to. Every station has like a limited number of people that can go to it, whether it's drawing or writing. It could be playing with Play-Doh, Legos. It could be pretending to be in the kitchen or a grocery store. There's a limited number of seats at each station. And so once that station is over, that is closed down, and the students have to pick and choose another station, even though their station might be up. But they go through 2 rotations every 35 minutes. So they come in, they sit on the floor, they get the directions, and now it's a very clean routine now. And then they get to pick their first choice, and then the person that picked last actually gets to pick first during the second rotation. So there's a lot of fairness and equity a part of the program, but it equals success for all the students that are in there. Some pictures from Roxanne Ekstrom when she came in to highlight all 4 of our programs that we're talking about today. You can see we have dolls and doll houses. Kids play school. They're just playing teacher in the classroom. That's a very exciting and fun one that kids love to do. I was a student in a couple of the classes that I visited. They graded me. I got a couple grades on some spelling tests. And you could pretend play, writing letters, just really kind of playing and working at your own pace without really feeling there's anything wrong with what you're writing or doing. You are your own creator of your adventure. Dress up. Playing with our alphabots, which is learning tool where students get to form words and letters, and then they transform into cool toys. Legos, always a hit. Measuring and building, we have a workshop that we keep adding to on a regular basis, but you can see we have the Home Depot workshop and kids building structures using their fake saws and hammers. Puppets, doll houses it's a huge hit. Every 3 weeks, we change the rotation, so there might be 12 to 14 stations in the room, and every 3 weeks we have Mrs. McCarthy, Mrs. Glitto, and Mrs. Billy collaborating on changing out the rotations where they are. Might just be a different look, but getting the students familiar with change and being flexible and making sure when they come into the room there's something new, so it doesn't get boring or stale. So that's one of the main things that we like about the Imagination Station. But again, we just have a couple of shout outs. Mrs. Donna McCarthy, who's here tonight, Mrs. Stephanie Glitto, Mrs. Tracy Billy, Mrs. Jagailo, and Mrs. Bagarin all help out in terms of providing either services, support, or supervision during our 35-minute blocks twice a week. And like I said, the kids really love moving through that part of their day. The way Imagination Stations came about was the idea of a makerspace, and a makerspace is connected to our science and engineering and building initiative. Manning had a makerspace long before it was an idea at Miller, and we actually kind of turned another space into the building into a makerspace where kids can create, learn, use their science, fail, and move forward on projects that they're doing, and that's in the library. So when they go to library specials, it's a smaller version of Imagination Station, but there's some finite items that are in the library space that the students get to play with, use, build, create, without the feeling that that they're getting a grade for anything. So a little bit about the library makerspace. Mrs. Johnston was quoted and interviewed by Roxanne, and one of the things that she said was, "I love watching the students create a structure. It could be magnet tiles, Legos, Kiva planks, dominoes. She observes them process and how to add and build. When it comes crashing down, they don't hesitate. They just pick up the pieces and try again." So having the makerspace adjacent to the library at Miller is such a gift. The students can listen and read aloud, learn a new topic, then head over to the lab and bring that creation to life. So the connection between reading, literacy, and now building is such a huge part of what we do in K-1. And Mrs. Billy, again, was also interviewed. Makerspace is a creative learning zone that allows our kindergarten, first grade students to collaborate and create together through building, manipulation, playing with a variety of materials. Students to overcome challenges while creating structures to problem solve with their peers. So again, when you talk about social emotional learning, both the Imagination Station and Makerspace help create connections that we've never been able to do before in such a concrete way. So we really appreciate the support from our teachers and the community and the PTO on making those two places come to life. And here's just some pictures on the things that you'll see if you came into the Makerspace down at the library. Some figures being built, magnet tiles, connecting together, creating and exploring using some of the tools, the kaleidoscopes. Kids ask a lot of questions. They work with each other. They learn to talk and articulate and discuss and debate and have discourse. So all the things that we want our kids to grow up and have when they become part of the professional world. Our third item that we wanted to highlight is a pilot program that the kindergarten team was super excited about at the beginning of the year as we were trying to problem solve ways that we were going to teach our students during a very tricky time. How's it going to look different than last year when we were in school half day versus remote learning? How do we share students when we have to kind of stay isolated and stationary? So they came up with a lot of really awesome ideas. It didn't start this awesome, but it started with a couple questions. But the kindergarten carousel is really about community. It's about bringing a group of adults together, our teachers in the building, and really focusing on all of our students. So if you can imagine the idea, this is kind of what I said when we first started the program of the carousel, is that would you rather have one adult looking after your child, or would you rather have 4 adults looking after your children? Whether they have 100 students or 22 in their class, you now have more adults looking over your children and really supporting their needs. Brainstorming, problem solving might be just a different way of learning, but that's kind of the essence of the carousel and what it's done. So what we've done is we create a carousel model, and it is actually a carousel. The teachers said the students moving from class to class, which is kind of ideal in a perfect world because they get movement, helps with transition, gives them brain breaks. The teachers this year, due to the pandemic, were the ones that moved from class to class to help with the social distancing components of where the students needed to be and not share the germs as if we would if we're moving constantly all day long. But the teachers move from class to class during 30-minute increments. They specialize and focus on a subject. It could change up every quarter. It could change every semester. But this year, they've had 2 rotations where the teachers change different subjects, and it allows for them to go a little bit deeper and be more consistent with the instruction that they're providing all of our monolingual students, because this program in the pilot only impacted the 4 monolingual classes because they're teaching similar curriculums, while the dual language teachers have a lot more on their plate that they're trying to juggle and handle in terms of standards. So It allows teachers to focus on their subject matter, engage students at higher levels. The kinder team meets to plan daily, not every Wednesday at 2:30, not every, once a week in the morning. They meet daily. They have 2 blocks of time that they can use. They also maximize their PLC times on Wednesdays, their SIP school improvement plans, institute days. They are always together. If I need to find them when kids are in specials, they're always together collaborating on making the next day better. Students receive the same academic language, which is very important at the young age. If I use a word and then Mr. Workman uses a different word that means the same thing, it could get a little confusing for students as we bridge that transition to first. They're using constant similar language to help transition that to first grade so they can have better conversations with first grade team about what the kids are going to be coming in and learning and understanding and building that vocabulary. So what does it look like? Right now, we have one of our stations is reading comprehension. So we focus on language arts and making sure kids not only are hearing what hearing and comprehending what they're reading, but also as they read, they're able to answer key questions. Able to write, this process has gone. Mrs. Hatterberg was just talking today about how it's exciting to start a year off teaching writing in kindergarten, but it's also very cool to see where they're at this time of year, where writing has come such a long way from unidentified scratches on a paper to words and sentences now, making sense. Just a couple examples of some informal writing I learned about. Sentence starters, what the students are expected to kind of show. They draw pictures and they write stories underneath. Obviously, it looks like Cat in the Hat, just a couple weeks ago when we had the celebration for that week. We do have a math carousel rotation where they focus on a half hour of math instruction connected to our math curriculum. And we have phonics where they're working on breaking words down and sounds. So based on those those are 4 of our biggest components of our language arts and math curriculum. They worked on creating a format that allows students to get very similar and differentiated instruction by all 4 teachers, and then they can problem solve and identify needs on a much more consistent basis as they're talking about all of the kids in all 4 of the classes. So how do they communicate about students' needs? They work in PLCs and plan time before and after school. Obviously, case in point here, they probably were meeting and having dinner, talking about their kids before coming in. Accommodations that are provided by IEPs and 504 plans, and then they all share common assessments that they're giving and exposing the students to. Some of the benefits of what they're doing is that every teacher is a safe place for every learner in all 4 classes, which is a huge advantage. All teachers are very aware of the accommodations that each student needs, whether it's in a plan or not. There's a lot of problem solving and meetings we have about each children that don't ever make it to, what you consider an IEP 504 or Tier 3 intervention, because they're able to support at a much earlier stage and be able to give the students what they need early on. All students receive the same common instruction within the Common Core areas. The kindergarten team works together to provide the best teaching for all students, and they can provide that by the different styles that they expose them to. And then they're able to take a deeper dive into the kindergarten curriculum and subject matter. And so what do you get with the carousel is you get very happy kids, very happy teachers, and they all are able to work on elevating that engagement, keeping the kids growing and learning at a rate that we are very happy with. So just a quote from the kindergarten team: the carousel has allowed us to create a true kindergarten community. Out of the classroom, each student feels comfortable asking teachers for help and support, which is ultimately what we want our students to do. And our instructional coach, who works with all grade levels, she also highlighted that the carousel has allowed for students to have the opportunity to learn from a variety of teaching styles, which also helps them in years to come as they prepare for the upper grades. And these are the groups. This is the group of students that we're impacting this year with the kindergarten carousel. And our final, we're proud of many more things than these 4 items tonight, but one of the big goals coming into the school year was how are we going to close the social emotional gap of students possibly being at home, not having the right supports, not being in front of the right adults in the academic setting. And we tried to, I don't think we were perfect in how we were navigating it, but we knew it was a one-time shot where our social worker, Mrs. Kapuska, has developed plans every day to get into each classroom once a week, developing lessons connected to our SEL curriculum, our second step curriculum, which is a district supported tool. And we're teaching kids how to share, how to cope with their feelings, how to be empathetic. There's 22 lessons in first grade and 25 in kindergarten. And she was just able to take this to the next level because she was able to meet with all universally every student in the building at least once every 5 school days. So that was something that we've never been able to do. We've always been in triage mode or handling things after they get to a certain level, and she's able to get on the front end and really support our students by giving them the tools they need to get through tough experiences. And we know the last 2 years have been tough for parents and our students. So her next goal is working with the parents in the community. Hopefully we could do something next year to kind of elevate that piece. But students meet with a social worker once a week in their specials, and the main purpose is to cover the social emotional learning goals, which is skills for learning, how to be a ready learner, creating some empathy, or building skills on creating more empathy for others outside of yourself, some emotional management, controlling our emotions and being able to calm down, and then just problem solving, because not everything's going to be easy in life. Those are the 4 key goals that she's worked on this past year in all classes. So we definitely want to continue our SEL support next year. It might look a little different where teachers begin to embed this back into their curriculum. We've got to figure out ways to get that time into those 5 to 10 minute lessons every day or once a week. And then the social worker, Ms. Kapuska, would be working on focusing on the small groups and the students that need a little bit more special attention, and working with them in small group during lunch, during the day when they're not in core instruction, and then also servicing our students with IEPs and 504s. But just a little bit about what it looks like in the classroom. Ms. Kapuska currently goes into each homeroom and provides the lessons in the homeroom, and she's got a couple therapy dogs that come into the school that she brings into her lessons. The students get to work on failing and then working through that failure. They get to work on figuring ways to calm down, whether it's with therapy or fidgets or just movement breaks or standing in a certain area of the classroom. She's really been an excellent resource to the teachers on how to create the best learning environment for all our students. And then here's just one more picture of what they're doing. They have some mindfulness where they're trying to calm and easing their breath down. And then obviously playing with Play-Doh calms everyone down, even us. Right? So that's, we're very proud to say those are the 4 initiatives that we're the most proud of right now. And we're hoping you enjoy them, and we're here to answer any questions you have about anything that we presented tonight. All right.
That was really impressive, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Not be done without everyone working together. And, I don't need to say this to bring in grade level centers, but this process definitely couldn't be done with the deep dive that our teachers do without being together, planning together, working together, dedicating their time every day to meet, to really enhance our programs at the K-1 level. They really know 5 and 6 year olds better than, they teach me every day how to be a better parent, and I, hopefully learn how we can engage the students in better ways in the school setting as well. So, thank you.
Congratulations to you and your whole team.
No, this is maybe a little bit more to come with your work with GLCs, but specifically with K through 1, with looking at the outcomes from this grade level. So I know it's hard because of their age and grade level, and I know as they transition into the 2nd grade, is there a way that you assess at that point, or is it something that you wait for when they enter 2nd grade and they have to start, I guess, those standardized testing to see how they are, and you can compare?
So one thing I think we focused on in the last 2 to 3 years is that a whole child, there's academics, and that's, I think, the easy part to measure. Are they ready academically for second grade? We're trying to figure out, based on our strategic plan, what are some other objective things that we can take a look at? How do we know they're ready for problem solving at the next level? How do we know that students learn how to share and are empathetic and are just good learners? So we're trying to figure out what some tangibles are for measuring those components. I think we have the academic pieces down that we do a great job with. Screeners at the beginning of, actually at the end of this school year to see how our kindergartners are coming in, if they're ready for kindergarten, then making class assignments based on some of that information, and then just following up on what kind of things we could put in place as benchmarks or checkpoints to see what kind of growth students are having as now they're in our classrooms and our seats. But that is definitely part of our strategic plan, to figure out some measurables that can measure more than just the academic components.
And I really excited with your presentation and the things that you guys are doing, and the whole team. I was like, okay, can I come?
Right?
Anytime.
Let's just be interested to see how, not that everything is, letter grades or test score, but how can we take that information and then show, like, okay, this is what, it brought out the tangible
Yes.
piece. So I'm excited to see it when it does come.
Next step in our planning process. Thank you.
I was gonna say, I'm gonna jump in now too. Hi, Tim. It's been nice getting to know everyone since my niece is over at that building. Hi, guys. Hi, Andrew. Miss you. But actually, my question is for Miss Hatterberg. You were kindergarten pre-pandemic, correct? Yes. How has this been now that you've had a team to collaborate with, as opposed to being the lone kindergarten teacher?
Ms. Hatterberg, can you go to the podium to answer so that you can?
Thank you.
Hey, everybody, I'm Laura Hatteberg. I thought I was going to be a spectator tonight.
You never know what we're
That's
gonna do.
That's okay. Yes, I was pre-pandemic. I've been at Miller, this is my 29th year. So I was working on my own little island for several years by myself. And I always wanted to work with others, but I was the only kindergarten teacher at Miller. And I love working with others. I think that working as a team is much better than working solo. You get other input from other teachers. We all have our strengths and our weaknesses, and we feed off of each other. So this has been a dream of mine for a long time. So, and I've been thinking about how we can share kids, and at PLCs, it's so much better when you're all sharing the kids and you know all the kids that everyone's talking about instead of having your own separate classrooms. So that's been wonderful, and just learning from three very, very great teachers has been wonderful. I've learned from them. Hopefully they've learned from me. The kids all learn from various learning styles. We're all, we work very well together, but we all have different styles of teaching, and I think the kids have benefited from that. They're getting to learn different teaching styles, but personally, it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful learning from my coworkers, and just, I love it. I love working as a team. I think, like I said, teamwork is the best.
Sorry to put you on the spot,
something
but
more-
I just wanted to hear from the veteran on the kindergarten team.
Yes.
So yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else while I'm here?
Thank you.
Nice job.
So I have to say thank you. Both of my kids have been at Miller, but this truly in your presentation tonight really speaks to something that I've said before, and everybody will hear me say it again multiple times: addition through subtraction. By taking out the trying to fit into grade schools into the Westmont model, these pieces were able to be added for all of our students at the kindergarten and first grade levels. And I don't think that it's anything that anybody, could have guessed 2 years ago, hey, we'd have makerspace and SEL in classroom. Like, nobody could have guessed that 2 years ago. And it came up through asking questions and being able to redistribute the space, our incredibly talented staff, being able to redistribute the knowledge for our students. I mean, we literally added, you know, how many more students onto that kindergarten floor, but now those kids are getting more personalized attention than they were ever able to get before. Like, this is addition through subtraction, absolutely, and it's growth in a really wonderful way. And it makes me really happy. And it makes my kids really happy. I hear about all these things. These are the things that make it home, you know, and for a first grader to tell you anything at home, that says a lot to me, so. Thank you.
And kind of the epitome of the kindergarten carousel is to build a community that's kind of at a much larger scale. That's what we try to do in every part of the building. Build that community, whether you walk into the front door of the building, feel greeted, talking to the teachers, having access to everyone. We're, you know, a very short distance away from solving any issue and crisis, so.
It's awesome.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There we go.
I wanted to thank Mr. Weiler because he's been so supportive of all of our ideas. And I'm like a tornado with different ideas, and I come in with lots of them, and he's just been so supportive and helpful to us. So thank you.
It's my turn, right?
Are we moving on to the
Yes.
strategic plan update, or is this part of?
It's a strategic plan.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the strategic plan update.
Good evening, Board of Education. I'm here today to give you an update on the strategic plan. And I kind of two objectives. I want to kind of go over the development of the strategic plan and then talk about what our next steps are. So this will be the opportunity for you guys to ask questions. And then kind of give you an overview of the strategic plan because there's a lot of parts and pieces, and I want to kind of help sort of give you some context to what all that means. So hopefully I'm successful. I provided a little timeline because we started this process back in February of 2020 by bringing together a group of families and staff members to, we called it Joint Committee at the time, and we did a SWOT analysis, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And we, you know, pulled apart all of those big sheets of paper, and we had an opportunity to collaborate and talk about where the district is and where we see the district going, and then kind of then to bring back and prioritize our goals. And that was in February, and we took a long break. So in November, we started to, we met as an admin team, and we started to make some plans for community and staff involvement. And we put together, Mr. Jonak actually headed up this process. And we put together surveys for our families, our parents, and our staff to try and develop sort of what we called our North Star, which is the portrait of a graduate. And this process of a strategic plan and to develop goals and action plans and all of that, it needs a guide. It needs a context. And the portrait of the graduate was what we developed. It took a while to sort of move things around and move information around, but based on the surveys that we got back from the families, we were able to capture what our learning community wants for our students. So when we ask parents the question, what qualities and characteristics do you want our graduates to come away with? The primary answer that we got was really things like confidence and flexibility. And we want our children to be really strong problem solvers and collaborators. It's a given that our district would be focused on the academics. That's a given. But what's really important beyond that is our students are developing into citizens. So our families carefully articulated those ideas. And when we asked the staff the same questions, they answered with the same answers. So based on that data, we developed our Portrait of a Graduate, which is kind of the guiding light in terms of what our direction is for everything else that we do. So as time went on, we met as an admin team. We introduced the Portrait of the Graduate to our staff in August. We got shirts with an emblem on them. We talked a lot about what our mission and our vision is. And then we continued throughout this year. We met with the Board of Education to talk about the working document. We developed the action plan. We once again revisited the Portrait of a Graduate this past Institute Day. And the other thing that we did was we found, actually Jack Balderman found an author that he's worked with, and actually I worked it several years ago. I worked with this particular book is almost like a guidebook on how to bring the elements of the Portrait of a Graduate, where it brings it to life in the classroom. And so it's a super easy read. And we started reading this as a staff on the Institute Day, and we asked our community of learners to look at the first 2 chapters and then look at it in comparison to the Portrait of the Graduate, which I'll show in a minute. And it was so powerful about how positive that our staff was about the work that we're doing and how excited they are. You know, we've had 2 really rough years, and we were afraid almost to say, you know, I think it's time. I think we need to kind of look at the future. And it was so powerful to hear all of the positive inputs and how excited we all were to start to really dive into what's necessary for our students for the future. So we'll talk about it tonight. I'll kind of display it and give you some context to what it all looks like. And then we're going to bring it to district leadership team next week, and then different opportunities to talk to our learning community, our staff, and then parent groups, and then we'll see you hopefully in April. So the strategic plan components, there's the first one obviously is the Portrait of the Graduate, and there's 3 pillars. The academics, this idea of higher order thinking, problem solving, and then student agency. And it was so cool because when Mr. Weiler was talking about the things that his students were doing, it ties right into that Portrait of a Graduate. That idea of student agency, where students have control, choice, and voice on how they're going to learn those skills. And it's really all about trying to provide the right environment. This isn't really esoteric. When you see how we're actually providing, we have evidence that we are giving kids the opportunity to learn and problem solve and work together and figure things out and fail. It's really happening. So it was great to get an introduction on how the littles do it, but designing those learning opportunities that capture the essence of our Portrait of the Graduate is our mission, and it's all throughout the strategic plan. Now, the nice thing about these 2 authors is they're giving us some step-by-step based on research and based on hard work that they've done in their own schools and schools throughout the country. So that's why we chose this opportunity to kind of give us help, and this author will be coming in to help us and coach us through this process. So that's our North Star. We have 4 strands in our strategic plan. Student achievement, obviously, very important. High quality teaching, which focuses on the classroom. Student and stakeholder engagement, which focuses on the school community. And then obviously the alignment of resources. So those 4 strands of our strategic plan are reflected here, and those goals are really ambitious. We're committed to providing opportunities for all of our students to grow and for all of our teachers to engage in inquiry-based professional learning. So that's where that's kind of those are the long-range goals. And the next section is you take each one of those 4 strands, and those statements there are statements that will show the conditions that will exist to know we are achieving those goals. So those critical strategies for action are conditions that we're working toward that tell us that that's going to help, that will support our long-term goals. So far, so good, right? Any questions? The real meat of the strategic plan and what we're going to live with and we're going to work toward, and you'll see the document's really long, so I'm just going to show you one page. But the real day-to-day work that we are engaged in is we take the strategy and then we identify how will we know when we get there. What's that deliverable? How are we going to measure? And then we have to recognize that those actions are going to take resources, they're going to take people, and then what's our expectation in terms of when we're going to see change or or how this is going to take place. And it's ongoing for all of them pretty much, but the really encouraging, positive, optimistic part of this is that in many instances we've accomplished those strategies in incremental steps. So you won't see, obviously it's a strategic plan, it's going to take us into the future. You won't see that we've accomplished that strategy everywhere or across the board, but you see incremental steps that are evident in the document. So the document's a living document. We'll always be adding to it. In fact, I know that there's some things that we can put in there today, things that we've accomplished. So this work that we're doing requires a lot of collaboration. And we have our instructional coaches to guide the teaching, our instructional coaches to guide the professional learning, and professional learning means the teachers this learning is sustained, it takes time, it takes a team, just the way that Ms. Hatteberg was describing. It's within the context of the classroom, it's connected to our goals as a school and as a district. And the complex system of measurement and focusing on the fidelity of our curriculum, you'll see there's a lot of strategies that involve articulation and working together around our curriculum, around writing and implementing assessments that are going to show us the competencies of those standards. So it's hard work, but the great thing is that our teachers are really enthused and very positive and very optimistic and excited to put all those 2 years behind us and move forward to implement our Portrait of a Graduate. So I'm going to be done talking. It's a lot. The document's long, but there's a lot to do. What questions can I answer?
First of all, this is great. I really, really appreciate it. I got to see a glimpse of this back in October. So
thank you for that.
Yeah, and obviously there's, like you said, it's a long document. I'm wondering, I don't remember, I know you put a timeline on there. There's a point at which the board approves the entire plan, but this document is not available publicly right now. Is that correct?
It's not, I would just convert it to, it's available publicly now because it's on the board docs and it's available. So-
This presentation is, but is the strategic plan? Is it also in board
The
docs?
whole
Maybe I
plan
missed
is-
it.
It is,
Yeah, the
it
whole-
is.
Oh, it
whole
is.
thing.
Oh, okay.
Yep, the
Okay,
whole thing.
okay. And since it's there, is there any harm in putting it on the district website?
Not at all.
Okay.
As soon as you tell me that that's appropriate, then,
I mean, if it's labeled as draft, right? I mean,
I think if it's labeled
as long
as
as it's
draft,
labeled as
that's
draft, I
fine.
would think it would be,
yeah.
it'd be good. One of the things, Nadine, that we've talked about as a board a number of times is communication and making sure everyone understands what's being not just implemented, but discussed also.
Right.
And so this is still a draft document, and I think that it'd be, and I know we got a lot of input from from stakeholders of all types at the outset, and it seems to me logical that we would publish it and make it, available, the draft available for people to just review, that's all.
the working document that has the incremental steps and all of this document, it's almost never gonna be final,
Sure.
but to have folks understand what we're working with, because everything that you guys do will connect back to this.
Right.
So, which part of the strategic plan will this resource be answered to? So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
So, yes,
Yeah.
I'll get right on that. What
Um,
else?
I have a couple questions. So, first of all, really great work. Like, there's a tremendous amount that went into this. It's very clear. So, good job. And thank you for the presentation and for sharing the full document. I guess, two things. So between now and April, when the board is scheduled to approve the plan, that's when there's gonna be community input or focus groups, is that right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit more about the process for those, or do you have a plan already, or is that kind of TBD?
For the staff, we have a district leadership team, and then each one of the school buildings have a SIP team that the plan will be made available to. And then with regard to the parents, we'll start with parent leadership or parent community, groups that are already established. Mr. Carey and I have not talked about anything beyond just making sure that parent groups, BPAC and PTO and those groups have a chance to, kind of hear this and take a look at it.
Yeah.
It's definitely it's definitely an educator's document. So,
It's very detailed.
Yeah.
Which is great.
we love working together.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten that yet, but so it's definitely, leaning toward the educator's lens, but it's really important to get feedback and to answer questions and things live where you have conversations. So accessing groups that we already talked to would be a good start.
Yeah, and I guess just to Carlos's point about transparency, I think us making sure through the process, us collectively making sure through the process that we're communicating what the process has been.
Yeah.
And all of the different points where the community has had an opportunity to engage, including, what's gonna happen between now and the next meeting.
Yeah.
So that's just one, question/comment. The other, thing I just want to ask is, some of the, making sure I use the right verbiage, some of the strategies have a very clear target completion date.
So, on this part of the document,
Yes, in
Yes.
the detailed
Yes.
document.
yes.
Others, it says things like ongoing.
Ongoing.
Yeah.
Most of them are ongoing.
So can you just maybe talk a little bit about the process for ensuring that generally talk about the process for ensuring that the strategic plan is being executed, Like, what are the touch bases gonna be? Who's gonna lead that process? How's that gonna work? And then specifically for things that are labeled as ongoing,
Yeah.
like, have you guys come to any consensus yet as to how you sort of make sure progress is made in those areas without, I understand why ongoing, but it also makes it harder to like,
Well, it's what's obviously evident to all of you is that we have to prioritize this
right,
document. And so with all of the redirection and kind of messiness of the past couple of years, this idea of having a target completion date, there's going to be touch points in which we can say, okay, we've gotten this far. We have a plan on how we're going to do each one of those things because, for example, the curriculum articulation. We know we've got a plan on when those things are going to happen. But that work is never done. You don't just articulate with your staff and articulate across grade levels once and then you're done. You're going to do it all the time and every year. So when you say ongoing, it's really, on the surface, these are things we're going to do all the time. Mm-hmm. And so first of all, what I would expect to see is that, progress to date will grow. You'll see that list emerge. And so and in terms of a target completion date, sometimes it's tricky because there is no completion. In many instances, we're not going to be done. We'll always be, revisiting. And your question about how will we know, or how will we visit this, or what's the sort of accountability?
right.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like who's overseeing the process?
Right.
Yeah.
The manner in which this was developed was so close and so collaborative. It was almost like the administrative team got a chance to dream what we really wanted to accomplish, and we got a chance to really put down on paper what we've been doing and what we always wanted to do and what we really want to accomplish. So the manner in which this was developed was so collaborative, and we are so committed to these ideas that we're going to hold each other accountable. And so first of all, and second of all, obviously we'll be providing to you a report like this as often as you want us to.
Right.
Quarterly or whatever it is you want from us.
I mean, I guess the reason I bring that up is because, as you have noted, there's a lot in this.
Yep.
And so I think as the reality of every school year hits, making sure that, as everybody's going about their business, that the prioritization of what's in here is really clear, so that the board doesn't have expectation that there's movement across all items every quarter.
Right.
And, when there isn't, then we're frustrated because there wasn't alignment on what to expect with each of the status updates. And so, like, we might see parent-school community partnerships as one of the top priorities. And that might be you know what I mean? Like, just making sure we're aligned on the priorities so that when there is progress updates, we all know what to expect and when. I think it's really important. We don't have to figure that out for April.
Right.
But I think
Something
us
to
having
be
a
more-
conversation about that would make sense.
What you're asking for is something more explicit in terms of maybe accountability. And what I can say, like I just got through saying to you, was this idea of the admin team holding themselves accountable because we're so committed to these. We wrote, the lion's share of the action plan because it was based on what we do. We do these things, and if we don't do these are things that need to be done, and these are things that we're holding each other accountable for. But your point is well taken, is that how will you know that we're making progress? That we're just not going to put this on a shelf. And that's why we're calling this a living document. We always want to be adding to this.
Right, and I'm not necessarily asking for more work, or for you
No.
guys to do anything more with this. It's more just, at some point during this process, we should talk at another meeting about the priorities within this.
Right.
And how you see year one playing out, how you see year two playing out, so that we have aligned expectations with your team.
Yep.
And if I could build on that just for a second, Laura, I think if I'm hearing you, it's certainly something I would voice, and that is that this is a long-term plan,
Yes, it is.
and it's very detailed, and as time goes on, priorities could shift, budgets could shift, things change, right? And so I think one of the things that the board can do in all of this is, yeah, we can see how the progress is being made, but whenever decisions need to be made about prioritization, if we don't understand where we are in the plan and where we are in the execution of this priority versus that priority, it's almost impossible for us to know how we can do what our little part is in this. Our part in this is to make sure that it's resourced, right?
Right.
And as priority shifts. So to me, it's accountability is an element of it, but sharing the progress with you so that when it comes time for shifts, we are aware and can adapt as a board is, I think, what my thought process is behind this.
Yeah, and that's what I was going for as well, as, just making sure we all know where the priorities are so that we can do our jobs best in supporting you.
Depending on where, depending on who you are in the community, and like what your role is in the community, the priorities are in a different spot.
Right.
Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
I know what the teacher's priorities are, I know what so yes, your point is well taken, and yeah,
Well, and if I can just to jump in there, to speak to that, depending on, right, what you're doing in the community, maybe this one way for this to be supportive and living in multiple ways is that, like, as the schools are coming in and doing different presentations, part of their presentation speaks to their parts of this. Because part of the challenge and part of the reason why this is such a big document is, frankly, we have a lot of schools. We have a lot of buildings, and we support students from preschool through high school. So you're supporting. So that might help too. Is that as the buildings are coming in, they're able to kind of tie this and speak to it, so that it's very living for us as well. Here in the boardroom.
that's a wonderful idea, because and without really actually articulating that explicitly, Mr. Weiler's presentation was exactly aligned to this.
Yeah.
So this whole idea of, for him to, what we're doing is aligned, obviously, because we are aligned to this plan.
Yep.
But to specifically articulate the alignment, and the same thing when we're asking for resources and we're making requests, to make those requests and align them directly to the strategic plan. What part of the strategic plan does this meet?
Right.
Yes.
That's important, and everything we do has got to have an alignment. Yes.
If it doesn't align, essentially, we either need to adjust the document or not do it, and that's kind of the,
Yeah, right.
What does this speak to? And if I can just ask, I think I know the answer to this, but this process has taken 2+ years.
It's taken a lot of
Is that normal, or is some of that COVID?
Some of it's COVID, and some of it's other things that we have come up against. But yeah, I think in this short window that I'm presenting right here, we got waylaid because of COVID. But it's important for you to know that despite all that, despite all the discussions and meetings and all of that about what's our mitigation plans and what's our mask plans and stuff, we were still working on this.
Mm-hmm.
So because this is our job, and you said something about it being long. So you have a lot of schools. Education's a very complex industry.
Yeah.
It's very complex. You can't measure it by a small amount of assessment data. And what we're doing is complicated. So that's why.
Yep.
That's another thing about the communication. Honestly, I mean, to me, that's the thing, when I look at this, this is a highly technical document with concepts that the uninitiated cannot understand and shouldn't, frankly. And this is a technical document, like you said. This is for you and the administration to execute on, right? And so you are the technicians. You are the people that understand what's in here. But in part of sharing over the coming weeks and months with the community, it's also educating to the degree possible. No one's going to get a PhD or a master's in education over the next 3 weeks, well, I'm not. Giving people an understanding of what some of this is would be also helpful, because I know that this is deep dive stuff, you know, so.
Thank you.
To that end, I guess my only thing regarding communication, and I don't know the practice, do schools typically, public schools typically post that longer document of their action plan available for the public? Or is it something
Yeah.
that's, that whole, okay.
Mr. Carey has this vision where you have each section and would drop down.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
okay.
you see like where the touch points are for the schools. So
Yeah.
the kind of the website has got a application where you could post it, and then sort of like if you're interested in this section, you could drop it down and see more
Okay.
information. So yeah, there's a way to design it so that it's not this cumbersome document. It'll still be cumbersome because it's a lot of information, but I think we could display it, or I think it can be displayed in a way that's friendly.
A little bit more digestible, and
Yeah.
maybe there's like a really brief introduction that kind of informs about what some of this stuff means.
That's
Yeah.
important as well. That would be important.
And it could be done in multiple languages, just. Saying.
The great thing about our website is it has a translator that you can just drop down and you can translate. As long as I don't post it in a PDF form and we type it in, our website translates it to any number of languages, which makes it accessible to
Yes.
our community.
Thank you, Nadine.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the update on the 2021-22 school year.
All right, and again, every board meeting, I update the board and our community on how things are going for our school district. And the good news is, as the pandemic is improving, the presentation is getting shorter, so.
Wonderful.
So that's good. But again, I just always like to reiterate, we've had our guiding principles since we started with the pandemic, and we've always have focused on these key elements throughout our school year. And again, it's always the health and safety of our students and staff, and then of course making sure that we stay in person, and we've been able to do that. Making sure that we have meaningful and engaging academic experiences. We're focused on social emotional learning, which Tim Weiler was able to illustrate that for the board, how his school is doing that. The consistency and stability, a lot of that revolves around being able to stay in person. And then we're continuing to provide professional development for our staff. In terms of the county, actually, I should change that low-level transmission. I should have changed that. The one thing, and you'll notice that there isn't a % positivity. With that transition to low level, the health department is now looking at slightly different metrics. And so it's no longer the positivity in new cases, but it has to do with hospitalization and beds in the ICU. And those are the types of numbers they're looking at. So even for the county, I have other slides that show our local area. We can still get positivity rates. But for the county, it's much more difficult to get positivity rate because that's some piece of data that they're no longer focusing on. And again, if you take a look at our positivity rates, they're all looking very good.
And if you go back to January 7th, where we were at and where we're at now, so the numbers again are looking very good in our area, in our community. And the new cases per 100,000, we're still, above that 50 threshold, but again, that's no longer what the county is looking at, the health department is looking at. But again, we're still above that 50 new cases per 100,000. But again, you can see the numbers compared to where we were at, a few weeks ago, definitely much improved. In terms of our own school data, since our last board meeting, we have had no new cases of COVID in our among our certified or non-certified staff. And then for our student data, since the last board meeting, we had a total of 6 new cases. But since we went to mask optional, we've only had 2 cases in our schools. So again, we haven't seen at this point any type of an increase at this time. And so again, that's pretty much what's happening in our community as well. We're seeing that, and so that's good to see. Our vaccination status is still improving again, but again, we're still relatively low for all of our schools, but that is an improvement over the last board meeting. And again, this transmission level, I'll probably be swapping the slide out because this is no longer what the CDC is focused on, 4 levels of transmission. Now it's a floating scale between the new cases and again, hospitalization rates. That's what they're looking at to determine what level of transmission they're at. And then again, our own district, we are still offering test to stay for families. We're still using the optional testing every Monday through North Shore Labs. And again, this is on a voluntary basis, and we'll probably continue that through the end of the school year, that service. Our current mitigations, again, we're mask optional, but we still have our other mitigations in place. So we're still using universal, or I'm sorry, that should be mask optional. But minimum 3 feet social distancing, we're trying to maintain that the best that we can, and 3 to 6 in our cafeterias. Still, we're encouraging hand washing, hand sanitizing is available in all of our schools. We have the optional weekly testing. We are encouraging the unvaccinated close contacts, and we're cleaning the high-touch surfaces. Our desktops are sanitized daily. Cafeteria tables are sanitized after each lunch. We're still keeping seating charts so that we know where students are seated. Still maintaining mask breaks, even though it's mask optional. And then with the weather improving, we'll be resuming outdoor lunch and outdoor band activities, and still encouraging our students to get vaccinated. And then as of February 28th, we do not have a federal or state mandate at this point, so masks are recommended in all of our school districts, but they're optional. And it's recommended that unvaccinated close contacts to a positive case be excluded, but it's not mandated, but it's recommended. And then masks are recommended on school buses. And then just a few reminders again, we still though, when students have symptoms, we're encouraging the students to stay home. And what a close contact is defined as, it depends on if students are masked or unmasked, if it's 3 feet or it's 6 feet. And then in terms of quarantining, again, when students are unvaccinated, they test positive for COVID-19, they still need to quarantine for 5 days, and they can return if they're symptom-free, no fever, diarrhea, vomiting in the last 24 hours, and unvaccinated persons who are a close contact, it's recommended quarantine for 5 days, or they can opt to test to stay, but again, it's not required that they stay home. And then if you do test to stay, you're tested on days 1, 3, 5, and 7. Vaccinated persons who test positive are quarantined for 5 days, and again, if they're symptom-free, they can return. And then vaccinated persons who are a close contact, recommend that they are tested, not required, but there's no need for them not to be in school. So, again, so far we haven't seen a spike in positive cases, and so things have been going pretty well. It's been a pretty smooth transition in all of our schools. So, any questions?
Just one. You said you were going to change the focus of the data that we're going to track, which makes all the sense in the world based on what you said. Do you have the data readily available to you?
It can be through the health department, you can get the information.
At what level does it go down to? The county level? It doesn't, the hospitalizations wouldn't go down to the local
Right,
level.
it would be at the county level.
Okay, all right. I'm still struck by those vaccination rates. It's the exact opposite of what one would expect. In terms of the trend from, there's more, the younger they are, the higher the vaccination rates are. The reported vaccination rates,
right.
so it makes, it's the opposite of what's happening everywhere.
Right.
You know, so it just tells me that it's underreported at the high school and junior high school level.
Right, yeah, definitely, I would
Well,
agree with
that's
that.
an assumption. You can't say it is. But
No, you're right, you're
Right,
right.
right.
It's an assumption, it's an
Right.
assumption. And you're right. Anyway, that's it, thanks.
Any other comments or questions for Kevin? All right, thanks, Kevin.
Sure.
The next item on the agenda is the presentation of monthly financial statements.
Wait, I'm sorry, I spaced out for a minute. Just a quick question, because it's like it's not just on this, it's culminated from the, all the presentations. And I sent everybody the email, because I just did the Equity Continuum webinar with ISB. You mentioned at the beginning of the school year that we would possibly be doing an equity audit. Is that still on the plan for some point?
It's still in the plan. The organization I've been talking to, they've been working with a very large district. And so they're just about ready to begin working with our district. Okay. One of the things we're working through is the proposed cost. So we're trying to get that cost down if we can. But we should be able to start that shortly.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Sorry.
All right. Now moving on to presentation of monthly financial statements.
Hi, good evening. I have the February financial report for you. During the month of February, the district received $613,000 from the state. There's $26,000 of fiscal year 21 payments and $11,000 of FY 22 payments vouchered that we have not received. I do have good news for you. Joe Smith, the Director of Buildings and Grounds, and I did write for the school maintenance project grant, so an additional one. And we did receive $50,000 from the state during the month of February. And that money, the project that we wrote for was for a roof replacement at South School. So it's the portion over the classroom area of the district. Estimated cost of that replacement is about $150,000. But this will go a long way toward getting that building, and then that building should be in pretty good shape. So we will start bringing information to you about this project and working with Steve Cashman to get that rolling as well. And then in the education and tort funds, revenues are comparable to the prior year averages. We received $563,000 of fiscal year 22 payments, and $120,000 was evidence-based funding. And then again, we have some payments vouchered that we have not received yet. In the O&M fund, revenues vary over the past several years, and they're a little bit lower than the prior year averages. And again, we're waiting on that SACID classroom lease revenue, and that should change the percentage. In the transportation fund, the revenues are above the prior year averages, and there are no fiscal year 22 payments vouchered at this time. As far as expenditures go, in the ed and tort funds, they're slightly above the prior year averages. In the O&M fund, we are 54.6% spent to date with contingencies, and 53% spent with contingencies, 54% without. And so a little bit higher than we were at this time last year. And then again, in the transportation fund, it's really difficult to compare one year to the next over the past several years because of COVID, because of, being remote part of the time, and then just the timing of when we get invoices from our vendors. And then when you look at the investments, we have $15.9 million invested right now, and obviously that will continue to go down until we start receiving tax payments from the next levy cycle. Does Does anybody have questions?
Congratulations on the grant.
Yep, it was
Yeah.
good news. So
Wonderful.
we've been very fortunate to get 2 of those in a row.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the IASB webinar, Preparing for Negotiations.
Okay. So, in the board docs and, via email too, same thing. I just posted kind of my outline for the, Trends in Collective Bargaining webinar as promised from the last meeting. So I broke it up into the 3 speakers, Lisa, Brian, and Frank. So, how would you guys like to talk about this? Do you want to just start with questions, or do you want to go speaker by speaker? What do you think?
What did you find most beneficial from the webinar?
Brian's preparation, the last section was by far the most beneficial. He really laid out a very he laid it out. Do this. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. What happens if you do this? He just really laid it out in a nice way.
That's bargaining process prep.
A failure to prepare is preparation to fail, so it's page 4.
I just have a question about, a lot of it feels pretty straightforward and not to diminish it, self-explanatory and helpful, very helpful as we move ahead and think about this. But what are COVID bonuses? I know what a bonus is, but can you talk a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, that's literally like bonus payments for being employed by the district during COVID.
But is that something that districts are experiencing?
Yes.
That is being requested in contracts? Is that something we've encountered?
Our last negotiations, it came up
Oh, okay.
from the WTA, and was something that the board team didn't think, didn't agree to. But the ESSER funds that districts receive, that's what some districts are doing. They're choosing to set aside some of that money for a COVID bonus.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, and they're starting to see it come at the bargain table, asking for that language to potentially be in the contract. And that's something that Lisa, the first speaker, kind of spoke about as the part of the collective bargaining trends on the horizon. And she really just spoke to, don't add things to your contract that are very likely temporary.
Like a product of COVID.
Yeah, to specifically say, here is a COVID bonus of X number of dollars, to actually put that into the contract, which is more of a living document and a very, very long-term document that you review every X number of years, to not put that language into your contract, because it's inherently temporary.
Interesting. I was just wondering about that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I like that Ange asked you about what you took. I don't think we have to go through each one, but I liked getting your what you took from there as being very beneficial. Something that stuck out to me was with Frank Garrett's, kind of your takeaways from that, the trends in employment law. Would you say the highlights, or what stood out to you?
So that was the shortest of the presentations, and you can tell that I took the least notes on that one. Frank really spoke not necessarily to, he called it trends in employment law, but really it was an update on employment law for this year. So everything that he spoke to was things that went into effect either at the beginning of 2022, beginning of the 2022-23 school year, or in 2021.
So not temporary things.
None of these are temporary. These are all things that are in place. And one of the reasons I didn't take a ton of notes here is because many of these things were not were not necessarily board pertinent. These are not like things that we need to approve or put into policies. It was more informational. Hey, you've got this. You know, the change in tenured teacher evaluations, I'll toss that one out there. Understanding that that change happened, and that it was an amendment to the bill was good to know, but it wasn't something that we would ever take any action on because it's a new law. So all of those, everything in Frank Garrett's was new laws that are in effect or going into effect.
So when you add may need to add to board policies?
So that one was, is that the last one, the closed meetings?
No, it's still under Frank Garrett's.
It's like
Student
Juneteenth, National Freedom Day, the Teach Act.
The student curriculum
To the
holidays.
student curriculum holidays, yeah.
It said add to board policies. You put in there.
Why am I not seeing it?
Under Frank.
Oh, okay. Sorry. If you do not already have any of these policies in place, you may need to add them. So that would be a piece for the policy committee.
Got it.
What about the board governance part about trauma-informed school board training?
So I think we got that. That was that piece, that training that came out. I think Shannon sent us the email like a month or two ago.
Oh, okay.
That was an updated required training. Yes, that should be in your inbox. I think I searched for it earlier today.
Great, thank you
Yeah.
for that.
As I was like, I know I need to do a training here somewhere.
I'm getting my trauma-informed yoga certification,
Yeah.
so hopefully that counts in the meantime.
Yeah. The closed meeting minutes is one that we need to potentially ask Jeff about. It requires a semi-annual meeting to review your closed meeting minutes, but I asked the question and didn't get the answer on the thing, if the fact that we review our closed meeting minutes at every meeting fulfills that. We just have to ask that. If there's anything that I have learned doing all of these things, it is that the things that we do are not necessarily done everywhere. Yeah, so they're just not necessarily done at every board works really differently. So I think that it's covered by us reviewing them every meeting, but we may need to ask Jeff about that. That was the only thing that I was unclear on from Brian's section.
I mean, I found Brian's section really fascinating and helpful. I mean, having been through the process this past cycle, you know, a lot of it rang true, and I can see some areas where, you know, I think these are things for us to definitely revisit when we get to our next negotiations, because, well, and we really should be starting probably prep for negotiations now, given the start early comment, but I just think that's really helpful. So thank you, Leah, for, you know, capturing all of this for us and putting it in writing so that when we get to that stage again, especially with so many of us being newer to the process, kind of having this to reflect on will be really helpful.
So should that be an action item or a discussion item at another board meeting, like the first steps and deciding who's on? Like, what do we do?
Yeah,
how do we
right.
how do we start early?
That was exactly, that was
this
gonna be
opens
exactly
that
my
up. Yeah.
question.
I think that's a great,
And Leah, thanks again for doing the legwork on this. It's super helpful.
yeah, I think
Appreciate
that's a
it.
great question. Kevin, is that something we discuss in open session, like maybe at the next meeting?
We can, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that we're at a point where we do need to start organizing ourselves for our next session. Again, thinking through how many meetings we have until the beginning of next year, going into summer already, really, like, you know, we need to start organizing ourselves. And one of the things that in particular stood out from Brian's presentation for me, and I was in the last round of negotiations, but I started kind of midway through, so I was not there for the beginning, and it was really kind of like, you know, catch up as you're swimming, was really about reading the contract and going through it and really spending some time with your contract and the team, right, to talk through what can you simplify, what isn't applicable anymore, like really to clean up. This came up in Lisa's as well, was some of these contracts you know, have been started X number of years ago, right? And many of these contracts might have language in them that does not apply anymore.
Right.
Or doesn't apply to your situation anymore, and the cleaning of that up helps the whole situation. And so, you know, I don't know if that was kind of standard operating procedure before, but I do think that it's an important operating procedure. And I think that that in particular is going to take whoever decides to be on the negotiating teams time. And it's going to take a lot of time to really think through. But I also think that it will inform and help guide the negotiations that we go into the future and really support win-win negotiations for everybody, right? So, yeah, that piece of it really spoke to me a lot. Other pieces of Brian's, right, just around agreeing on your terms at like the first meeting so that you start with an agreement right off the bat. This is how we're gonna operate, right? So, Brian spoke a little bit about alternative negotiating ways, which like win-win bargaining or interest-based bargaining, which I think is something that we should explore. But really, his best practice is start early, and get going.
Yep.
So, quick question, can we get a reminder of when do we expect to start the process? Not the preparation, but the actual engaging in negotiation. When do we expect that? When is that supposed to happen?
Trying to remember what one of our agreements, I think the first one is our maintenance custodial. I think their contract expires at the end of the year. The
Calendar year, end of the calendar year.
end of June, no.
Oh, the end of the school year.
They're
Yeah,
all
this
school
school
year.
WTA is June of '23.
Was it what, we did a one-year rollover for Westba, but then we did a,
Right, and Westba might be 23 as well, or 24, I mean, 24 as well.
So, the teachers is June of '23,
right,
Right.
Yeah.
is when it expires.
when it expires, right?
So we should really be, ideally, we should have an agreement well before that. We should be
Right.
starting and entering earlier.
Okay, and so what is that, can someone walk me back, what the typical, like 6
Right.
months, 3 months?
Yeah, typically like after the first of the year.
Okay,
You usually you wait for the bargaining unit to send a letter that says they're ready to begin bargaining.
okay,
And so then I would say probably after the first of the year is when you'd start having conversations about dates and setting those things up, you know, so prior to January is when the board wants to kind of have their idea
Yes.
of their plan and how they want to go about it.
one more question, since you mentioned that typically we wait until we receive a letter, can we initiate that sooner?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I don't see
I think
reason
so.
why not.
I was reading my collective bargaining book. I think we can.
Okay, just,
I think we can.
that's really out of curiosity, I don't know.
And some of that, so one of the things that comes up, interest-based bargaining is something that I have been exploring. And something that comes up with that is, it's a lot of time. It's a really big time commitment. But it's a little bit of a different time commitment. So, the longer your bargaining goes on, the more time that you have. So the more time that you're spending at it. So interest-based bargaining is a bigger time commitment up front, but it's typically a shorter process overall. So you have less meetings than you would with a more traditional, what you would call like adversarial style of bargaining, where you might have a lot of 2 or 3 hour meetings. With interest-based, you would have less, but a longer, much longer meeting, because you're working from kind of a trust, you're working on your trust in a trust-based relationship with interest-based. So
Is that something that's agreed upon with both parties? Like, do you have to?
yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things that we need to talk about, and we need to talk to Jeff about, and we need to talk to our bargaining units about, which is all kind of part of this.
Priest, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
like we have to have decided that.
Right.
Because I would say if I were to do it all over again, I'd rather spend 3 full days than 30 3-hour sessions. I mean, that's what I would rather do.
I mean, I could definitely make an argument for that. for sure.
Especially because the sessions typically happen later, and especially as you tend to get into spring and spring sports, you know, being really respectful of our volunteer time as board members, right? The teachers' volunteer time as union members, and the WESPA contract, you know.
Yep.
The union reps are doing this voluntarily also, so it's all on everybody's extra time. So working through those pieces are things that we need to do. And something came up for me as a question, is there, does it make sense, and Kevin, maybe you can answer this, does it make sense for us to have like a committee organized in a similar way to like how the PR committee is organized? Not necessarily a finance committee, but does it make sense to have a committee to have these more in-depth conversations and then report to the board as a whole? Or does it make the most sense to have these conversations at the board table?
If the board kind of identifies this is your bargaining team, then yes, that group could kind of have those conversations and come back to the full board.
And then bargaining conversations, and once we enter into bargaining, those are closed. Those meetings are closed because it's obviously confidential. That's a little bit hard to find, like the, where does that, like,
Right.
where do we hop over from a general conversation like we're having tonight, which is really more of a educational conversation for the board, flipping over to a more specific conversation about how the board, you know, organizing itself for negotiations. Like, where does that go from? And you may not have the answer for this tonight,
Yeah,
but
I want a legal opinion on that.
Yeah.
when do we go from like?
I'm kind of thinking maybe if we can put this on our next meeting agenda and just like, I don't know, maybe does that give you enough time to kind of have some
Yeah, it does.
timeline
We've got a little bit of
information
time
and maybe
for the
some of the
next one.
inputs that we need so that we can have an informed conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying to look at that timeline sheet that I thought I had started in an email that broke down on how the year goes. Maybe we need to add when contracts are ending into that, like.
That's a
That would
great
be
idea.
wonderful.
This is
Yeah.
your
Put it on the
beginning of the
calendar.
school, this is
Yeah.
when you plan for next school year, this is when we do staffing, okay, contract for this year.
Good idea, Ange.
Yeah, and so just to so that nobody misses this, next year we bargain. Next year we replace our superintendent. Thank you for your service, Mr. Carey. We have the strategic plan this year, right? That
Yeah.
these are
There's
superintendent
lots going
and
on.
bargaining, real big things.
What's going on next year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
All right.
wait, I just, one more comment, though. I just want to make sure that everyone does understand that our legal team, it's been a practice that they always review the language each year in the contracts to make sure everything's up to date and things like that. So that's a given.
Oh, that's
And-
good.
Thank you.
And common
you.
practice in our district.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's
Thank
good
you,
to
Kim.
know. Yeah, I think, and one of the things that Brian brought up was, after you've read the contract, like board member read the contract. Board members come together, talk about what they said of the, or what they understood in the contract, and then a conversation with our legal team as well, so that everybody has a really good understanding of what's in that contract. And because our legal team does update that contract every single year and review it every single year, they have the best history of that contract, which many of us don't have on this board.
Right.
But it's not updated every year. It's
Well, it's updated as.
Every cycle.
yeah,
Every
Every
cycle.
cycle, yes.
Okay, great. Okay, let's move into the action items. The first action item is the approval of authority for additional March 2022 expenditures. The chair will entertain a motion to authorize and direct the treasurer to pay any bills received in March 2022 that have been budgeted for the 2022 fiscal year.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Steckity?
Yes.
Ms. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Marin?
Yes.
Ms. Redonio?
Yes.
Ms. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Avia?
Yes.
Okay, number two, approval of the 2022-2023 staffing plan. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the 2022-23 staffing plan as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Marin?
Yes.
Ms. Redonio?
Yes.
Ms. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Avia?
Yes.
Ms. Steckity?
Yes.
Okay, number 3, honorable dismissal of teachers. The chair will entertain a motion to adopt the resolution authorized honorable dismissal of teachers Francisco Delgado, Kimberly Rosales, Megan Seaver, Elizabeth Smith, and Cheryl Thompson as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Marin?
Yes.
Ms. Redonio?
Yes.
Ms. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Avia?
Yes.
Ms. Steckity?
Yes.
Ms. Conover?
Yes.
Okay, number 4 is dismissal of probationary teachers for other than RIF. The chair will entertain a motion to adopt the resolution authorizing dismissal of first-year probationary teacher Eileen Burrell for reasons other than reduction in force as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Redonio?
Yes.
Ms. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Avia?
Yes.
Ms. Steckity?
Yes.
Ms. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Marin?
Yes.
Okay, number 5, non-renewal of interim administrator. The chair will entertain a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing non-renewal of assistant principal's contract and dismissal of probationary teacher Jeffrey Bernstein as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Avia?
Yes.
Ms. Steckity?
Yes.
Ms. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Marin?
Yes.
Ms. Redonio?
Yes.
Okay, number 6, approval of continued employment of non-tenured teacher and tenure recommendations. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the continued employment of non-tenured and tenured teachers as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Avia?
Yes.
Ms. Steckity?
Yes.
Ms. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Marin?
Yes.
Ms. Redonio?
Yes.
Ms. Hoover?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Superintendent's report is next. Mr. Carey?
A couple things in my report. On March 11th, we hosted a Realtor Fair at Westmont High School. This was our PR committee came up with the idea, and so on March 11th, we had the Realtor Fair. We had over 51 agents who attended, and they received information about our district. Each school put together a brag sheet for them to take with them, and we received many positive compliments from the agents who were there, and some of them even said they're going to make sure that they share the information with some of their clients that they were currently working with, so it was very, very successful. And then we had one of our Westmont High School seniors, Prana Viswanath, who organized a STEM night at the high school targeting elementary students. They had over 200 people attend.
Amazing.
And an inaugural event, he and some of the other student leaders did it. It was, about STEM topics and pursuing STEM careers. And so they're hoping to make it an annual event. But for the first time, it was really, really well done.
It
I
was
have
organized
to
by
jump in. It was amazing.
Yeah, wait, a student organized
Yeah,
it?
Yes.
and
That's incredible.
That's
And
incredible.
Pranav, when he spoke, was like, he's a truly talented speaker. He's clearly very passionate about STEM. But like, it was awesome. It was really amazing.
But don't tell my son, because he was mad at me because I was out of town and I couldn't.
Oh,
couldn't
you're
take
going
him.
next year.
You are.
And he called me. And who's going to take me? And I couldn't take him. So. Don't.
And then just a reminder to our community that kindergarten registration will take place at Miller beginning March 23rd through the 25th, and then April 4th through 8th, April 11th through 14th from 9 to 11, and 12 to 2 on those dates. Again, if that doesn't work for a family's schedule, they can contact the school and set up an appointment. We do offer an all-day kindergarten program at Miller, as well as a half-day program, and then also students have the option of a dual language program in kindergarten. And just a reminder to our parents that their child needs to be 5 years of age before September 1st, and we need the original child's birth certificate with the embossed seal, not the hospital certificate. That's my report.
Great, thanks. Are there any board reports tonight?
So I'll just add for the PR committee meeting, just hats off to the administrators and community members that are part of that, and other things that we discussed. So ongoing work just to discuss all the many parts of our district. We do have plans for a newsletter, and hoping, we always talk about the different avenues of communicating, and there's so much work to be done. We recognize that, but that's one thing that we're looking forward to, and also looking forward to having a staff position that helps, the district with communicating. So there are so many things in the works, and also with that, we still invite anyone or parents who want to be a part of that to get this. There's so many things, so much work that we're looking forward to doing, and to help with support and finding solutions, and just helping to promote our students and our district. So we have so many fine things going on. The last thing that, we did talk about in the committee was the high school blue ribbon party. There's a tentative date. I don't know if Kevin, if that's decided, April 14th.
Right.
There's another event that celebrates our school, especially the high school, and they get to celebrate themselves. So we'll give more information.
I wasn't at the last PR meeting, but since you mentioned it, and I know that this gets broadcast and people watch this afterwards, to any of the community members who are in particular, like I am, focused on how this school district and this board communicates with the community, I would invite you to join us on the PR committee and help improve the communication.
So many great ideas. It's actually a wonderful committee, if I promoted one myself. No.
All right. I have a couple of things. So number one, I just wanted to acknowledge that last week the junior high school lost a student. Alex Piskowski, a 7th grader, passed away last week. So just want to send our a sincere regrets to his family, and want to thank the community and the school community for all the support that we have seen, the outpouring of love and support for them. So you're in our thoughts. And I also just wanted to just take a moment to say that, at this board table, we have the responsibility to make some really tough decisions. Some are popular, some are not. But really, once the decisions are made, it's our collective job as a community to work to move forward and work towards everyone doing their part to make the district successful. And I would just really implore members of the community that now is a really big turning point for us and for our district. We have a lot of things behind us. This is a really good time for us to turn a corner and start moving forward in a positive fashion together. And to really make good use of our administrators' time and their leadership, and allow them the space to prioritize what needs to be done and do it as they see fit, and to really come together as a community to support the decisions that have been made. And, I just think that the reality is the decisions aren't changing anytime in the short term. So the best way for us to all progress together is to move forward and work together and not against each other. And we've done that really well as a community in the past, and I know we can do it moving forward. So I just really wanted to make that outreach and plea to the community to keep that in mind as they consider, how they progress with their communications with the district as well. And we will keep it in mind as we work towards new solutions. So, well.
Sorry, Laura, you brought something to my attention. Manning and Miller are collecting a sunshine box for Alex's family. You reminded me of that. In the vestibules, either at Miller and Manning, just a note of love and positive energy to his family, or they're asking for maybe food donation, gift cards and stuff, but reach out to the PTOs at both buildings and they can fill you in on what they're looking for. But yeah, with the community coming together everyone's been very supportive of Alex and his family this last year, so.
That's great. Any other board reports?
I actually had something else that actually Leah made me think of that I've thought about as we are going into the spring for the board. I don't know, we can take it further as a discussion item, but as we go into our new school year and into the summer, as a reminder that the offices that we carry as president, vice president, secretary are one-year terms. And so, as a reminder, as Leah brought up, there are not many meetings we have left in this school year as we think about it and prepare. If every one of us wants to think about that, and as we've mentioned before, even if presidency is on your mind and you, we have opportunities to run meetings. Sometimes it's because we're not available, or one of us is not available. That's still an option for you, but something to have on your mind as you think about as we go to the next year, that those opportunities, not that I'm looking for Laura to go anywhere, but that is an opportunity for that. So just keep those in mind as we
You have what,
go
a
into
year
the
left,
school
Laura?
year.
You have a year left,
I
right?
have a year left on my board term, but, you know, the seat of the president will be
Yes.
open as of,
Me.
Because we are all coming up to our 1-year anniversary, or 1.6 for you
1.5.
guys, some of you guys.
So Adina, thanks for bringing that up. We will be doing, you know, the election actually will
Right,
be in May.
at the May board
At the
meeting is
May
when-
board meeting. I do not hope to be nominated. So if anyone would like to practice running a meeting or take a stab at it, Adina has done so, and but if anyone else would like to have a role at that, you know, there's 2 meetings in April, and I happily will take a back seat to let you give it a run. Any other board reports? All right, there's no public comment. So future meetings and events. The Westmont Junior High School musical, which I believe is School of Rock?
Rock of Ages.
Rock of Ages. I get those two confused all the time. The Westmont Junior High School musical Rock of Ages is this weekend, March 18th at 7 p.m. and March 19th at 2 p.m. I know the kids have been working really hard on that. Go out and see the musical. Incoming kindergarten open house, March 22nd at 5:30 at Miller. K1 open house, March 22nd, 6 p.m. at Miller. CUSD Fine Arts Night, which is always a great night, March 23rd at 7 p.m. at Westmont High School. Spring break, there's no school March 28th through April 1st. The elementary PTO and committee meeting is April 4th at 6 p.m. at Manning. The junior high PTO meeting is April 6th at 7 p.m. at Westmont Junior High. Preschool screening is April 7th, and you should contact Student Services for that. International Night, hosted by the BPAC, is April 8th at 6:30 at Westmont Junior High School. And our next board meeting is April 12th at 6 p.m. at Village Hall. We do not need another closed session, so the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn the March 15th, 2022 regular meeting of the Board of Education.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.